Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to the Stoner Report. I'm Marius Stoner, Associate Editor of Cannabis Culture Magazine, here at the BCMP Vapor Lounge at 307 West Hastings, with another edition of this week's Cannabis News. So we're having a beautiful day here in Vancouver, British Columbia. It's a little chilly, but we've had really, really good weather this winter. We're extremely lucky. I know that the other parts of the world are not so lucky, but if you're in Vancouver, good for you. Anyway, so let's start off this week's news with Colorado, where the pot market has exceeded its high tax hopes. Colorado's first legal marijuana market is far exceeding tax expectations, according to a budget proposal released Wednesday by Governor John Hickenlooper that gives the first official estimate of how much the state expects to make from pot taxes. The proposal outlines plans to spend some $99 million next fiscal year on substance abuse prevention, youth marijuana use prevention, and other priorities. The money would come from a statewide 12.9% sales tax on recreational pot. Colorado's total pot sales next fiscal year were estimated to be about $610 million. Retail sales began January 1st in Colorado. Sales have been strong, though exact figures for January sales won't be made public until early next month. The governor predicted sales and excise taxes next fiscal year would produce some $98 million, well above a $70 million annual estimate given to voters when they approved the pot taxes last year. The governor also includes taxes from medical pot, which are subject to a nationwide 2.9% sales tax. And some bad news from Washington, unfortunately. The Washington House has overwhelmingly approved a ban on medical marijuana dispensaries. It's kind of a shock, came in a couple of days ago. Last night, the Washington House of Representatives approved a bill that would abolish medical marijuana dispensaries, aka collective gardens, and impose new restrictions on patients who use cannabis for symptoms relief. House Bill 2149, which passed by a vote of 67 to 29, would thereby eliminate some of the unregulated competition for the state-licensed pot stores that are expected to start opening this summer under I-502. The legalization initiative that Washington voters approved in November 2012. Supporters of the bill, which was introduced by Representative Aileen Cody, Democrat from West Seattle, hoped that banning dispensaries will help maximize tax revenue and mollify the feds. The bill requires patients to buy their cannabis from the same stores that serve recreational customers, which would be the only legal sellers of medical marijuana as of May 1st, 2015, when the provision allowing collective gardens would be repealed. Patients could continue to grow marijuana for their own use, but the maximum number of plants would be reduced from 15 to 6, 3 of them flowering. The ceiling on possession by patients would be cut from 24 ounces to 3. The bill instructs the State Department of Health, together with the Washington State Liquor Control Board, which is charged with regulating marijuana growers, processors, and retailers, to produce a report by November 15th, 2019 on the question of whether it is appropriate to continue allowing home cultivation. So it looks like the state legislators are striking back on I-502. It doesn't sound very good for medical patients. On the other hand, the Washington House okayed a bill creating industrial hemp businesses. Industrial hemp would be allowed to be grown in Washington state under a measure passed Monday by the House. House Bill 1888 received unanimous support in the House and now heads to the Senate. The measure authorizes the Director of the Department of Agriculture to issue licenses to grow industrial hemp. The department would be designated as the sole source and supplier of seeds used for industrial hemp production. Hemp is used to make a variety of different products, including clothing, food, beauty products, and biofuels. It's fitting that on President's Day we can recognize the first three presidents of this country, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams, all grew hemp crops, said Republican Representative Matt Shea of Spokane, sponsor of the measure. Shea noticed that Washington state currently imports hemp from other countries, and he said legalizing industrial hemp in the state means hundreds of jobs. I usually leave the hemp for last, but they were all a bunch of Washington, Colorado stories that I thought I'd put together. With 22 veteran suicides daily, Cannabis University trains vets to advocate for pot medicine. Casey Robinson of Santa Cruz, California, served in the Marine Corps from March 2001 to March 2006, completing 3 tours in Iraq. He was injured in 2009 and again in 2005. After completing his term, he was honorably discharged due to his injuries and then referred to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs for treatment. That treatment involved a cocktail of different pharmaceutical drugs, which Robinson said made him feel unbearably numb, like a zombie. Hey, Jeremiah.
Hi, Marius.
That zombie effect, or inability to feel anything after using pharmaceutical drugs prescribed for veterans for psychological issues and pain, is commonly reported, as is suicide, which is listed as a possible side effect on most of the drugs commonly prescribed through the VA to treat psychological symptoms in veterans. Robinson was luckier than many vets, 22 of whom take their own lives every day in the U.S., according to a study released by the VA. He found relief in an alternative form of medicine, which more and more veterans are advocating for the right to consume: cannabis. While participating in a cycling program through the VA, Robinson learned that many fellow cyclists had chosen to take themselves off the VA medication and use pot to treat their symptoms instead. He followed suit. 2 years later, he helped to form the local cooperative California Veterans Medicine, which provides medical marijuana at no cost to service-connected injured veterans. CalVet Med's activities are governed by the state of California and operate in compliance with the compassionate use of 1996 Proposition 215 and Senate Bill 420. And why surging support for marijuana is hurting the GOP and will for many years to come. As the movement to expand access to marijuana grows across the country, the Republican Party, with the exception of its kooky libertarian wing, has a bad case of reefer madness. Government Rick Perry, who's no stranger to moments of mental madness, equated marijuana to use to murder, while Governor Chris Christie has more or less said he preferred dead kids to stoned kids. During the 2012 election, Mitt Romney promised to fight tooth and nail against pro-marijuana legalization. With national polling shows more than 55% of Americans support pot legalization, Republicans remain strongly opposed, and in fact, more than 2/3 of Republicans voted against legalization in Colorado and Washington. With Republicans likely to remain opposed, marijuana could emerge as a big cultural wedge issue winner in both the 2014 and 2016 elections. The GOP holds a majority of the House of Congress and is threatening in the Senate come November. But in state elections, marijuana on the ballot has big potential to harm Republican candidates. In January, a Florida Supreme Court approved a proposed constitutional amendment that would legalize medical marijuana, assuring that the initiative will appear on the state's November ballot. The referendum on pot may, in turn, determine the winners of the state's gubernatorial race. According to the most recent Quinnipiac University poll, 70% of Floridians favor medical marijuana, which augurs well for the Democratic challenger Charlie Crist, given Governor Rick Scott opposes the bill. There is considerable evidence that vote turnout rises when pot is on the ballot, especially for young voters, who would naturally favor a candidate who supports it. So that's good news, although you can't really trust the Democratic Party that much. They are slightly better than the Republicans. Here's a kind of a cute story that all the newspapers seem to have picked up. It's harmless and innocuous, so I guess that's why they did it. Girl Scout rakes in the dough selling cookies outside medical marijuana clinic. A 13-year-old Girl Scout and her mom had a target audience in mind when selling cookies this year. They set up shop outside a medical marijuana clinic. On President's Day, Danielle Lay and her mother Carol put up their cookie table outside the Green Cross Marijuana Clinic in San Francisco and raked in the dough. In 2 hours, Danielle has sold 117 boxes of cookies. That's 37 more than she sold the same time outside a Safeway the next day. It's no secret that cannabis is a powerful appetite stimulant, so we knew this would be a very beneficial endeavor for the girls. Holly Burt, staff member at the Green Cross, wrote Mashable. It's about location, and what better place to sell Girl Scout cookies outside than a medical cannabis collective? So that's kind of cute. On to some Canadian news. The RCMP say that medical marijuana is being abused. The police point to trafficking, violent drug ripoffs, and organized crime involvement. There is an overwhelming temptation for growers of medical marijuana to supplant their income under the current system by selling extra pot, the RCMP says. Police investigators have revealed various abuses of the federal medical marijuana program, including trafficking for personal gain, violent theft of homegrown pot, and involvement of organized crime. RCMP Corporal Shane Holmquist says in an affidavit filed in the Federal Court of Canada, Health Canada plans to revamp the medical marijuana system in part due to concerns about criminal infiltration. Under the existing program, to be phased out by April 1st, people are issued licenses to grow marijuana for their personal use and help ease the symptoms of painful conditions. Several British Columbia residents with licenses to grow their own pot are asking the federal court for an injunction that would allow them to continue doing so. Yeah, there's a lot of excitement about April 1st coming up. We're all worried about what's going to happen to all the medical marijuana growers and all the dispensaries we have in Vancouver. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait and see. The medical marijuana poses new problems for Metro Vancouver. There's another story related to that. As hundreds of BC companies clamor to become licensed medical marijuana producers, a split is emerging among municipalities over whether such facilities should be allowed on agricultural land, confined to industrial areas, or banned entirely. Municipalities are rushing to pass bylaws before April 1st, when Health Canada will no longer permit medical marijuana users to grow their own supply. The only legal access after that deadline will be through government licensed producers. This has led to a proliferation of medical marijuana companies applying to Health Canada to become licensed producers. Of the more than 400 applications across Canada, about a quarter have come from BC. Health Canada spokesman Sean Upton said, "To date, Health Canada's website lists 7 authorized licensed producers of medical marijuana across the country. 2, Canna Farms Limited and Thunderbird Biomedical Incorporated, are based in BC. Neither returned calls on Friday. Canna Farms lists a Maple Ridge post office box as his address, and Thunderbird Biomedical's website says only that it is based on Vancouver Island." So again, there's lots of people trying to get licenses for the new program, but apparently it's very difficult unless you're a big corporation. The trial of a Kamloops medical marijuana club owner has begun. The long legal journey has begun for owner-operator of a Kamloops, BC Compassion Club, the Canadian Safe Cannabis Society, as he challenges the legality of Canada's marijuana laws. The trial began Monday for Carl Anderson and his business partner Wesley Jenkins, who are facing one count of possession for the purpose of trafficking. But Anderson also plans to launch a constitutional challenge to the federal law banning such non-profit clubs from selling unsanctioned medical marijuana, saying the current regime violates patients' charter rights. Provincial Court Judge Stella Frayne noticed the trial and subsequent constitutional challenge mark what is likely to be a lengthy court battle through multiple levels of appeal. "I'm mindful this is just the starting point," she said. And we have other articles on the arrest and shutdown of that the Canadian Safe Cannabis Society on our site, if you want to learn the history of that. In South Africa, for the first time, a bill to consider medical marijuana has been introduced. A cancer-stricken member of parliament says the bill will help terminally ill patients. For the first time in its history, South Africa will consider a bill calling for the legalization of medical marijuana. The bill's sponsor, cancer-stricken member of parliament Oriani Ambrosini, says legalizing marijuana will help patients suffering from life-threatening illnesses. The opposition politician admitted to Parliament this week that he uses the drug to manage chronic pain related to his late-stage lung cancer. In what some considered emotional speech, Oriani Ambrosini appealed to Parliament Wednesday to help terminally ill patients like him. And other international news. The U.S. drug war is destroying rainforests. Not surprising. Rainforests around the world are rapidly disappearing due to illegal logging, the growth of palm oil plantations, the clearance for cattle ranching, and other forms of commercial agriculture. Now, scientists warn of another threat to the rainforests of Central America, especially those in Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, and some of their neighbors, the U.S. war on drugs. This is according to a new report in the January 30th Science Daily. Drug trafficking leads to deforestation in Central America. It seems that the drug war in Mexico, fueled by the misguided anti-drug policies of the United States and the Mexican governments, in which both rely on military action and violence instead of legalization and reform, has driven the drug gangs deep into the remotest areas of the jungle of Central America, especially into supposedly protected regions where they are destroying large areas of the virgin forest to build airstrips, roads, and storage facilities to facilitate their drug activities. They are also constructing agribusinesses in order to launder their drug profits. It is almost impossible to believe that all this activity could be going on under the noses of the United States and its allies in the so-called war on drugs. Such blatant activity appears to be protected due to the graft and corruption of all the parties involved. This has been going on for years, according to Kendra McSweeney, a scientist at Ohio State University, whose research, along with others, was the basis of the Science Daily report. In response to the crackdown in Mexico, she said, drug traffickers have begun moving into Central America around 2007 to find new routes through the remote areas to move their drugs from South America and get them into the United States. When the drug traffickers moved in, they brought ecological devastation with them. And finally, a story from Australia. Australia lags as the hemp takes off in the U.S. This month, the United States has lifted a ban on growing industrial hemp for human consumption. In Australia, a ban remains. Queensland-based industrial hemp company Ecofiber Industries says Australia is lagging while the USA surges ahead. Ecofiber Managing Director Philip Warner says several U.S. states are pushing ahead with hemp fiber and oil growing projects since the U.S. Farm Bill Hemp Amendment was passed February 7th. He says Australia has... it's 2:20. So happy 420 to everybody in the Central Time Zone. And happy 220 to everybody here. So I'm just going to light this joint and then I'll just finish reading the story. I think that I'm not sure if Ashley's going to make it. She should have been here by now. She would have been coming in on her own time. So I guess it's such a nice day and she probably had something else to do. So I'm sure she'll be here next week. I'll coordinate with her again. But until then, I'm going to light this up. Check out the chat. Sorry, I don't pay too much attention to the chat on this show. Oh, that's because... Where is it? It doesn't seem to be working again. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Hello, chat. How's it going, everybody? Nice to see you all there. Okay. So yeah, I read the news kind of quickly today. And I'm halfway through the last story, so I'll just finish it off and let you guys go. Don't forget to, I'll tell you about that afterwards. He says Australia has lost the opportunity to export hemp foods and industrial products to the USA and Asia. Mr. Warner just returned from America and says Australia has almost missed the opportunities to sell homegrown hemp technology and knowledge into the Americas as well. My next trip, which is in a month's time, I go to Colorado, California, and then down to Uruguay, which I've been very much involved in the new legalization they've put through there. So let's hope he can shake some sense into the Australian government and change laws there. In time, I'm sure it'll happen. Everything seems to be going our way, if not quickly, then slowly but surely. So don't forget to come and visit us here in our Vapor Lounge at 307 West Hastings. Come to our bong shop or clothing hemp store and bookstore. I think there's still a special on books, 15% off, I think, until the end of the month. And come visit up in the office. Say hi to Jody and Jeremiah and me and Greg and stuff. Thanks again for joining me. Don't forget, cannabis is the most advanced plant on the planet. It's going to help save the human race from its own self-destruction, help save the planet, yada, yada. So I'll see you all next week. Take care. Peace out.